Welcome, everyone. My name is Abe Bran. I am a 3L at Southwestern Law School here in Los Angeles, California. And I will be one of your moderators for tonight, along with Liam, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, great to see everyone. I'm Liam Cronan, Tufts class of 2020, and a 1L at Boston University School of Law.
And we want to welcome you all to our inaugural event for the Tufts Lawyer Association Law Student Group. This is the first group of its kind. As you all probably know, we don't have any kind of student group to support other law students and foster networking opportunities. So we would like to develop this group and have future events. So we're going to post a couple links in the chat for anyone who doesn't know. Tufts Lawyer Association does have a website and a blog for you to follow along with any future events. There is a directory for lawyers to sign up for, so please make sure to sign up for that if you haven't done so already. For law students, we're still in the works of getting something formal together, but in the meantime, please email Liam if you have any, if you would like to be placed on a listserv to receive notifications of future events. Tufts Lawyer Association also has social media. We have a Twitter and Instagram account, as well as Facebook and LinkedIn pages. So make sure to follow those as well. And we also have a few upcoming events that we want to plug for you. The first one is a trivia night that we've planned on the 29th of April. The next is the next event of the Tufts Judicial Series, featuring the Honorable Nancy Atlas from Texas on May 12th. The third is a Business Development 101 for attorneys, and that'll be on May 25th. And the last is another Judicial Series event featuring the Magistrate Judge Stephen I. Locke from New York. And so that's kind of all the preliminary stuff that I had to share with you all. Thank you for bearing with me. A little bit about tonight. We want to start by introducing our panelists in a very brief way, because there's so much we could cover and spend the entire hour talking about all of their accomplishments. But we want to make sure we have enough time for the questions. So if you haven't already, please take a look at the event website under the panelists section or the speaker section for full biographies. But tonight we are joined by Sabienne Brutus from Tufts 2013. She went to the Maurer School of Law in Indiana and currently is a data breach analyst at Epic Global. Welcome, Sabienne. Next, we have Anastasiya Lobacheva. Yes, got it. From 2015, my year. Then she went to Northwestern Law School and is currently a litigation and dispute resolution associate at Mayer Brown. Next, we have Jamie Maffeo, also class of 2015. She graduated from Brooklyn Law School, and she is the founder of New York Law Dog. Next, we have Andrew Page, class of 2015 as well, also a graduate from Northwestern School of Law, and he is an associate at Faegre Drinker. I butchered that one, didn't I?
Faegre Drinker,
my apologies. And last but not least, we have the Honorable Judge Stuart Rice, class of 75. He went to Northeastern University School of Law, and he is currently a presiding judge at the Los Angeles Superior Court. So welcome to our panelists. And for anyone that has any questions, please feel free to either raise your hand and you can ask our panelists questions directly, or you can type them in the chat and Liam and I will take care of those for you. But we also have some prepared questions to get the program going. Liam?
Sure, thank you so much, Abe. So to start off the formal program, as he said, we have some prepared questions, but please, we welcome any questions from the audience that you may have, either raise hand or send them in the chat, and we'll make sure to address them before the event concludes. So to start off, I would like to open up a broad question to all of our panelists in whichever order you'd like to start it in. And that is, what was one thing in law school that you found most helpful or most relevant as you transitioned into your professional career? So whoever would like to take that first.
I could jump in. I had the opportunity to have a judicial externship when I was a second-year law a law student, and that's the first time I'd ever been in a courtroom. And changed the way I viewed a career in the law. Just having an opportunity to be in court instead of watching it on television. I had the opportunity to work with a very fine judge who enjoyed having a student around. And it actually brought the classwork together to see the way the courtroom really works. And so that when I did graduate, I felt more ready to practice than I think I would have otherwise.
I guess I'll go second. For me, the experience in law school that was most relevant to my professional career, I'd say, was I was accepted into as a fellow to the Center for Constitutional Design at my law school, and the center just focuses on using constitutional design, using the Constitution to promote democracy, and all these other great things that center corporate governance. However, I feel like the answer is threefold because our clients were government or candidates running for nationally ranked position in the jurisdictions we work for. And because we worked with different countries, so we have different writing styles for different clients, and breaking down complex legal issues into a digestible, intelligent way for a politicians to understand. And finally was the deadline. Sometimes I would get an email to provide something the next day. Other times I'd have a month to prepare a memo or a white paper. And finally, it would be the group aspect, the group work aspect of it, because I worked with JDs, PhD candidates, as well as professors at that center. So it felt most real life than anything else.
I'm going to say legal writing, and I don't know if Anastasiya would agree with me or not. But, excuse me, because we both went to the same law school. And I think legal writing is something that I remember not loving, because I felt like I was a very good writer when I was at Tufts. I felt like I was just like, so like I did a thesis. I was like, I know how to write. And I got to 1L writing and I was like, and they were like, you don't know how to write. And I was like, what? You're crazy. But I think it really ends up mattering. Probably more so in a litigation field than a transactional one, but I'm really lucky to have done a clerkship last year. And when we were looking for my replacement clerk, the person after me, I got to help with the hiring process. And so I got to see what people's writing samples look like. And I can just tell you, it is, you can tell when someone's a good writer. And it just conveys so much about them. So I think legal writing was more important than I thought it was. And I only realized that once I graduated.
Yeah,
I definitely agree. Oh, you go.
Davey. Okay, no mind. I was just going to follow up on Drew's point and say that writing is really, really important. And if you can take a class beyond your 1L writing class in law school, preferably a smaller one, where you get an opportunity for more individualized feedback and multiple drafts of something, because a lot of the times legal writing your first year is just focused on a lot of people with a broad range of, who all need to take the class. But if you can take one really writing intensive class, that's really, really helpful. For me, that was an appellate advocacy class at Northwestern, but it can be anything like that. Appellate advocacy, maybe something focusing on discovery, something like that would be really helpful.
I totally agree that legal writing was a super useful class to have during law school, even though at the time I definitely would not have characterized it as such. But yeah, everything Drew said about it, like when you have to actually have an internship and you're asked to like write something, it gives you that sort of confidence to be able to.
Thank you all. to shift gears a little bit, because I don't want to talk about legal writing anymore, I have a question for Andrew, or Drew, sorry. In law school, you're involved with activities that aren't directly involved with or directly related to what you're doing. One that I flagged was that you were part of Northwestern's annual student written law musical. Could you talk a bit about why and what other kind of benefits these activities provided you?
Yeah, for sure. And I apologize if I'm squirming. I just got a puppy, and he's deciding out of all the hours of the day right now to be just really the worst. But YouTube now has that saved for us. Oh my gosh. Abe, why don't you come back to me, okay?
Sure thing. So I'll just jump to my next question, which is for Jamie. Speaking about dogs, can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration and what prompted you to create New York Law Dog?
Sure. So I've thought about this answer a lot today, and in the most succinct way, I will expand a little bit, but very succinctly, I never really saw myself as a traditional lawyer. I grew up with parents who are a judge and a lawyer, so I always saw these jobs are just very stressful, honestly, and I didn't want to work for somebody else, which sounds maybe a little bizarre, but like I had like a very bad experience at one workplace, and while it should not define all my other experiences, it set me on this path where I was like, I want to work for myself. I don't want to have to work for someone else. And anyway, New York Law Dog, well, I don't know if New York Law Dog will ultimately be my future. I love working on it, and I'm going to continue working on it right now. It's an animal rights blog, and I've recently added in tech and art because I've gotten into the NFT space, which if anybody's into crypto or crypto art, definitely hit me up. But yeah, but NY Law Dog originally started as purely for animal rights, and I love my rescue greyhound. She got me into animal rights, and then I realized there was an animal law class. Sorry, speaking quickly, but trying not to take forever. And yeah, it's an animal rights blog. You can check it out at nylawdog.com.
So Drew, I see you're back. So if you're ready, we can take up the question that Abe had asked about your experience with non-law related activities while in law school.
Of course. So this is the dog, by the way. And he's wonderful. Anyway, so as I mentioned, yeah, I really did so many non-law things in law school, and I think it is really important. So I was part of our annual student written law musical. Like a lot of schools have some kind of performing arts thing. From what I could tell, which is pretty interesting, because I think there's a lot of overlap between litigation and being in front of a crowd and performing. And so I was really involved with that because law school is tough, right? Law school, you got a lot going on. And I think to the extent you can find a way to get involved in a way that's not legal, I mean, you're going to be doing law for the rest of your life. You're going to be super, like, once you started law school, you're going to be doing it forever, or you're going to be a lawyer for a long time. And so take the time to have some kind of break from law school, whether it's maybe join a running club, whether it's, some schools have like a law school band, like do that. For me, I get a lot of joy and a lot of kind of breaks from being in performing arts. So that's why I did lots of performing arts in law school.
Great, thank you. So the next question we have is to Sabienne, and that is, could you talk to us a little bit more about the independent research project you did, what it is, and what prompted you to pursue that opportunity outside of law school?
Very well. Yeah, my last year of law school, so I'll probably, no worries. My last year of law school, I applied for and received the Snyder Visiting Scholar Fellowship, which was to conduct an independent research at the Lauterpacht Center for International Law at the University of Cambridge. And the project was of my own design, and I was really focused on the International Monetary Fund. I know we all went to Tufts, so you know what that is, and its goal to maintain global financial stability and economic growth. But when I looked at its relationship with low-income countries where the average person makes less than $1,200 a year, I realized what the IMF purported to do was not happening. And that was the impetus for the whole project. And my whole premise was just that, well, if it's not working and the IMF keeps awarding these loans that do not get paid back and that awards more loans, and it's predatory lending. And I just had 6 months after law school to sit in a nice little room at Cambridge to figure that out and find ways for the law to solve that issue. And obviously it was just a unique opportunity. And I have to be real, I was graduating without a job offer. So it was like, well, you're taking if you're not familiar, for those who are not in law school, I took the July bar, I took the New York July bar, and the results don't come out until October. So from July to October, I was going to be without a job anyway. So did I want to be without a job in Cambridge, researching something I found very interesting and there's a gap for it in the international law field, or do I stay in New York and wait for more results? So I decided on the former, and it was just really a unique opportunity. Sabienne needed more time to figure out her life, and it worked out for me.
Thank you. My next question is for Judge Rice. So seeing as how you see a lot of new attorneys in your courtroom, what kinds of bad habits do you notice in these new attorneys, and do these habits go away with time?
Well, Abe, you should tell everybody that you are currently an extern for me. And we didn't even know we both went to Tufts when we found each other. Unfortunately, Abe is not allowed in the courthouse, so it's not much of an externship because he doesn't get to watch the way another one of my externs who didn't even go to Tufts is on the call. And he was here in person, got to watch the best of lawyers, the worst of lawyers, and everything in between. And I think you can learn something from the lawyers who really don't do a good job as well. Sometimes the best lawyers are a bit intimidating because you wonder whether you ever can aspire to be at that level. The question assumes something in the way it's phrased. What kinds of bad habits do you notice in new attorneys? Which means that new attorneys have bad habits. So some do, some don't. I'd rather just use this as a teaching moment of things that I observe. So a lot of young lawyers who go to work for a big or medium-sized law firm who spend most of their time in the library organizing documents or responding to interrogatories. And then one day their boss pops in and says, "Hey, how would you like to go to court?" And they just tell you, it's just a case management conference. Just go in and get a trial date. And they hand you well, in the old days, they would hand you a file. Now they tell you how to look it up electronically. So you do that. You accept what your boss tells you, and you come to court, and you think all you're going to do is get a trial date. And Judge Rice says to you, "Do you anticipate filing a summary judgment motion in this case? Because that will influence what date I give you for trial." And your answer to me is, "I was just asked to get a trial date by my boss." That's a truthful answer, but it's not the right answer. If you're going to go to court, it is your case for that day, at least for that court appearance. So you need to be prepared. Even if your boss said, "Oh, just go get a trial date," you need to find out what a case management conference is, or whatever it's called in your jurisdiction. You never want to feel like the judge asks you a question that you just have a deer in the headlights look. And I think a lot of young attorneys do just that. I also think it's important for all of us, not just young lawyers, but all lawyers and judges as well. I'm actually on a commission now. I was appointed to a commission run by the State Bar of California, where we're studying the issue of civility within the profession, or the lack of civility in many instances. As a young lawyer, you may, if you're a litigator, you may view every case as like a football game, or somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. But this is a profession. It's not just a job. And your opposing counsel is not your enemy, unless they earn that. They can earn becoming your enemy because of improper conduct themselves, or misquoting you, or mistreating you, talking down to you because you're young, or a woman, or a person of color. You don't have to take any of that. But when you begin, your opponent is just another member of the profession, and you work together on the things that you can work together on. And, you have to advocate for your client, but it doesn't have to be mean-spirited. And too often it is. I've been keeping track, because I'm on this commission, of all the law and motion work that I'm doing on a daily basis, and how many of those motions are really necessary and how many are before me because the lawyers don't talk to each other or can't communicate or just rather battle than work things out. And that's something I notice. And frankly, right now, the columns are about even. About 50% of my motions are completely unnecessary from my perspective as a judge. The other thing that I notice, I've talked to Abe about this, and I remember this myself. I was in law school a long time ago, but you take legal writing or any other classes in which you have to write a paper. There's no deadline, right? Other than when the paper's due. You can stay up all night for 3 weeks in a row, and you can spend hours. How are you going to write your first heading? But the real world is quite different. The deadlines are real. You miss the deadline, you're going to lose. And you have to be able to work on your efficiency and how you use your time. Because when we were students, for some of you much more recently than I, you're going to work on that project so that you did everything you could so that you can get the highest grade and so that you can learn the most. And you want to do the same thing as a practicing attorney, but there are limitations. That heading of your first heading can just be introduction, procedural history. Don't sweat the small stuff. Make your good points. Give the judge a reason to rule in your favor. That's how you have to write for when you're an advocate as a litigator. So I think that a lot of times you guys, not you guys so much, but the people who are still students, you have to really learn, and law school does not teach you how to use your time well, how to be efficient so that you can get everything done that needs to be done, still have somewhat of a life. And if you're at a big firm, or like Jamie said, she doesn't really want to be working for someone else. That's a understandable goal. I worked for a small firm for a few years and then started my own firm and had lawyers that worked with me and for me. And I didn't really want to ever have a boss. And so that's something you have to decide what you want, what niche works for you, rather than feeling like you have to pursue a certain path. I've had many externs over the years that were very smart, did a really good job, went to good law schools, and 2 second-year summers coming, and the big firms are coming to their school, and you just get sucked into that path because you are capable of pursuing that path, whether that really works for you or not. You have to figure out what works for you. Job one as a lawyer is not necessarily the job you're going to end up with. It may not be where you want to stay. You get a job at a big law firm and you may not love it, but it helps you pay off your student loans. Hey, that's worth it for a few years. And then even if you decide to leave, you've got another good entry on your resume that you would work for a prestigious law firm. You don't have to stay in a job that makes you unhappy. The law is so vast, the types of jobs you can do. Frankly, this panel alone, look at the variety of things that people have done just a couple of years out of law school, and it's very admirable. So those are some of the things I would say that I think you learn with experience. And the transition from student to an adult practicing attorney is a great one. And we may have learned how to analyze cases when we were in law school. But other than these experiences we got as part of our extracurricular activities, as an extern, as a clerk, as a volunteer in legal aid, whatever it is that you chose to do, that really helps you to be a lawyer much more than what law school does. Law school teaches you how to think like a lawyer. It does not teach you how to be a lawyer. That's what I would say in answer to that question.
Thank you, Judge Rice. I think I'm speaking for all the law students in saying that we definitely appreciate hearing all that advice. So I'd like to take a second just to answer a question that we have submitted to us, and that is, I guess, combining two questions. How would you describe the state of diversity in law schools, and how can law schools improve diversity and belonging both in the legal profession and in legal academia.
That's such a big question, and I just feel like we could be here all night to answer that. So there's two parts: the state of diversity writ large in law school, and what can be done to improve that. Correct?
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. So I went to the Maurer School of Law. It's in Indiana, so it's as diverse as it could get in Indiana. I feel like generally when we're looking at the numbers across the nation, they're just abysmal in terms of diversity when we think, and I just don't mean, ethnic diversity. I mean, it's socioeconomic diversity. The profession is such a gatekeeping profession that it's really hard for anyone who's not what a traditional lawyer looks like to break in. So that I'll just leave it there. I mean, I felt like my law school, I was okay with the numbers. I had gone to Tufts for undergrad where the numbers were 5% Black, and I went to Maurer and I think it was a little bit better, 9%. So I was like, hey, we're doing slightly better. So we'll take that. We can always do more, obviously. So what I think can be done better, and this is from my experience of applying to law schools, visiting law schools, I think sometimes the admission office is just so focused on getting the numbers. They don't think about retention. They don't think about making the space comfortable for those who are not, on a traditional path. So I am a first generation college graduate, first generation law student. I'm walking to places I know nothing. They just assume that people have certain, like those who they label as diverse have the resources to succeed in those places. So I feel like now the issue is that they're focusing on the numbers and not the retention and the equity aspect of it, to keep it short.
Even though I've been out of school for a lot longer, this is an important topic to me, to our court, to our community. I mean, I've been involved in bar activities or now judicial activities and organizations throughout my career. And I've had meetings with legislators in Sacramento who have said to me when I was president of the California Judges Association, hey, the bench does not reflect the community. And we need the bench to reflect the community. And I think that's a laudable goal. But we need a pipeline. We need a pipeline of people who need to be told at an earlier age, you can do this, rather than not even explore it as an option. So a couple of things that I've done personally is I have a mentoring program that I do at Cal State Dominguez Hills undergrads. I don't know how many of you are from Southern California, but Cal State Dominguez Hills is part of the Cal State system. It's a university that keeps continuing to improve in its stature. But virtually everybody that goes there, when Sabienne made her comment, it made me think of it. Almost everybody that I've worked with over these many years, they're all first generation. Nobody in their families have ever gone to college, never mind law school. And my request of the professor that I partner with on this program, he picks the kids. I said, I want them to be juniors or seniors. They don't have to go to law school, but they have to at least have an interest in going to law school if I'm going to take them on as externs. I take 8 every semester. And I don't tell them just send me people of certain ethnic groups, but for the most part, most of the people are of color. Are first generation. They come from underserved communities, and there's been way more women than men I've noticed as well. I think Cal State Dominguez Hills is 70% women who are working full time. Some of them have kids. It's amazing what they do in the course of a given day, and they could do anything. Some of the kids that I've worked with at Cal State Dominguez Hills, the questions they ask me after watching my calendar for one day, so insightful, so bright, so excited about the potential of their future. But they also graduate undergrad with, a student with a lot of student debt, which they're going to be, now they got to go to law school and take on $150,000 more in student debt because they just don't have the financial support from a family. Now, sometimes they get full scholarships or partial scholarships, that can help. So one of the other things I started a couple of years ago through the California Judges Association is we started a needs-based scholarship fund for undergrads who want to go to law school. And granted, the money we give them is not, it's not going to pay your tuition, but last year was the first year we actually awarded our scholarships. We awarded 10 scholarships. We had 30, we narrowed it down to 36 people and finally decided to make it a meaningful amount of money. We would give 10. And all 10 of the people we awarded scholarships to were first generation undergrads who wanted to go to law school. No financial support from their families. Many of them had escaped from other countries, you know, taking their younger brother or sister by the hand and coming to America. I mean, just stories that make you cry. And it's very rewarding for me to have funded this, initially done the initial funding for this scholarship fund, and then others have donated quite a bit of money as well. And we're going to be doing this every year and giving 10 people each year who maybe don't think they could have done this on their own an opportunity to go to law school and feel that they belong in law school, rather than the sense of, I could never do this. Some of these young people, we had plenty of people that applied that had tremendous academic backgrounds. I mean, all the kids did, but we did not give the scholarships to necessarily the ones with the highest grades, because this is a needs-based scholarship. That is the emphasis. And when you apply for the scholarship, you have to create a 3-minute video and tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background. Why do you have this need? And what do you want to do if you become a lawyer? And I think that pipeline is essential to increase diversity in law school, increase diversity in the profession, and then also be able to diversify the bench, because there'll be far more applicants of underserved communities who have made their way to wanting to be on the bench. I'm not saying everybody has to want to aspire to be a judge, but we have to start young. Actually, next week I'm teaching a class to 8th graders. Somebody put a program together, it's called Judges in the Classroom. So I'll be doing this exercise for 2 hours with these 8th graders, and hopefully some of them will be excited about the possibility of going to college and going on to law school, where otherwise they maybe did not think they had what it took to go, or that they would be accepted, or that they would feel a sense of belonging in an environment that is for which they are the first of their family to have pursued.
Thank you, Judge Rice, and thank you, Sabienne, both. I know it's a very difficult question, but I appreciate your concrete responses to that. Anastasiya, I have not heard from you, so I'm going to pick on you with the next question. So I want to know, in your practice, what particular tools or courses or activities from law school do you find most important or helpful?
So I talked about legal writing, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I think the most useful thing that I did in law school for myself was actually clinic. I don't know if your law schools offer clinics, but I was fortunate to have a lot of offerings at my law school. And I was part of the civil rights clinic at my school through the MacArthur Justice Center. And the civil rights clinic introduced me to civil litigation in a lot of ways. So I could use the skills that I learned about in the classroom in my civil procedure classes and actually apply them to real life and to clients that really need assistance. And it was the most rewarding part of law school, but also I still use the things that I learned in clinic that in law school, at my law firm. And I actually brought in a case from my clinic as a pro bono project, and I'm filing the opening brief tomorrow, so I'm a little bit nervous, but it's not just the skills you learn, but the connections you make in law school that last beyond it. And clinic is one of those things that if you stay in the same region as your law school, and even now in this remote world, beyond that, you can have those connections that you can foster beyond in your pro bono practice. So connections is one thing. And then the other thing is clinics are like baby law firms, right? Or baby public interest organizations. So you learn to have a legal boss, you learn to be responsive to emails, you learn about deadlines that are, as Judge Rice said, real deadlines, court deadlines that you have to meet. You learn about working with paralegals, you learn about how to delegate tasks. And those things are just essential foundations for what you learn, what you actually do in practice beyond.
Thank you. So as Amy just posted, if you do have any questions, feel free to submit them. The next one we have is a follow-up for Drew. So you mentioned earlier on that you had taken part in a clerkship. What was the transition like from law school to a clerkship, and what did you learn as a clerk that you didn't as a law student?
Yeah, sure. So many things. I think one of the strangest transitions from law school to a clerkship, and I don't know if Judge Wright would agree with this or not, but just having a judge who trusts your opinions on things, you know, I mean, just coming out of law school and being like, you actually want to know what I think about, you know, this real case that's happening. You know, if you do a judicial externship, you'll get a little bit of that. I'd done a different type of externship. I'd worked for a Chicago agency. I hadn't done a judicial externship, so I had never had a judge, you know, ask like how she thinks I should decide this case with her. And so, I mean, not to always harp on the judicial writing, but the legal writing, I mean, it did really come in handy. But I think some of the things that I learned, I mean, I think all of you guys having just been Tufts alums, first of all, so you guys are already really smart people. You guys are already, like, there are a lot of law schools out in the world. There are a lot of lawyers out in the world. We've seen in the news that some lawyers, regardless of, you know, your partisanship, there are some people who are really kind of sleazy lawyers. And they're out there doing law too. And they have just as much experience. I mean, they've just as much education as the rest of you guys do. And they're out showing up in court, doing appearances, sometimes making a fool of themselves. I mean, I clerked for a bankruptcy judge, and bankruptcy is, you know, a very specialized area of law. But I saw some pro bono people who were, you know, handling their own bankruptcy, who gave some better arguments than some of the actual bankruptcy lawyers who, you know, have their degree and are just churning out cases, but aren't really putting in the time and effort and heart. And so I learned a lot from my clerkship, just seeing the breadth of what type of laws out there, what type of lawyers are out there. I mean, all the time after a hearing, you know, my judge and I and our deputy and our paralegal would talk about what had just happened in court. I mean, like, and would remember names. You know, law, no matter what city you're in, people know each other. You know, there's a reason why all of your law schools have networking events that are just like, you got to go network, because networking is such a thing. And lawyers network, and judges know about the lawyers, and the judges talk about the lawyers. And so when a lawyer was unprepared in court, or was, you know, making a weird argument, you know, we would talk about it, but it also taught me a lot about, you know, what arguments not to make in my eventual practice. And I don't think I ever saw anything that I would ever think about having actually done. And that I think is unique to the type of clerkship. Because I think if you do a Supreme Court clerkship, either US or state level, or an appellate clerkship, either again, state level or federal, you know, you're going to see a lot of appellate arguments. You're going to see a lot of, you know, really thought out briefs, right? If you work at, I'll say a trial level, which I would say includes magistrate, district, bankruptcy, you're going to see a whole barnyard of different types of litigants coming in, making their cases. And so I guess the biggest thing that I saw was what it's like to be a bad lawyer, what it's like to be a lawyer who's making really disingenuous arguments. There's a lawyer who tried to explain how the public utilities company in Chicago works to my judge, who's a bankruptcy judge. And on top of that is a Black woman and also used to be general counsel for one of the utilities firms. So like, how stupid do you have to be to go into a courtroom and where utilities is a big part of your case and try to like mansplain to a judge who on her website says that she worked for ComEd? Like, that's such an easy mistake to not make. And I saw someone do it. I saw someone else not understand the parole evidence rule, which is in your 1L contracts. It's just wild that are people who are lawyers out there, because you pass the bar and then you get to be a lawyer, and some people don't use that for good and just kind of really phone it in. So this is kind of a, I guess what I learned is, and I suggest the rest of you, is to, you know, be the best kind of lawyer you can be, because people take notice.
Great, thank you, Drew. And we just got a question in the chat that is pretty broad, so I'll open it up to whomever would like to answer. But did you find law school to be, I assume this means academically, broadening or narrowing? So I think there's a lot of different ways you can take that, but interesting question.
I would say both. It's narrowing in that you're focused on a specific part of expanding your brain, but it's broadening in that you're being exposed to, you know, the third branch of government. You're reading opinions by some of the great legal scholars of our time. We've chosen law school because we're interested in the law. So in that sense, it opens up a whole new world to us. And also, a legal education never does you any harm, even if you end up practicing, you know, in a traditional manner. So I think a law degree and the process of getting there, overall, I would use the word broadening rather than narrowing. It's only narrowing in the sense that you're focusing all your energy in a more narrow subject area than being a liberal arts major in undergrad. So I felt that it definitely broadened my horizons and, you know, helped form the rest of my professional life.
Since this panel is about practicing, and I definitely agree with Judge Rice. However, I will say this: if we're looking at it from a practicing context, I would say, well, and law school is definitely narrowing, because if you're not interested in litigation, and we have the, you know, Drew, Anastasiya, and Judge Rice are, you know, are all litigators, so it would have been very helpful for them. But as someone who was never interested in litigation, you have to make it your own mission while you're in law school, besides the classes that you need to take to pass the bar, and just basic requirements, to find classes that feed your interest. So I'm interested in financial regulations. It is a growing field. We need innovators in the field, and we need lawyers in the field. However, there are very few. So you have to take all the corporations classes, the business classes. And I was a research assistant for a professor whose scholarship centered around understanding markets, because how many times are we going to wake up and see that no market crash, or a Bitcoin is trading at crazy amounts and the lawyers are just sitting at the sidelines? And I felt like the law is always 5 years or so behind in what's happening in real world time and with technology. So if you're interested in not being a traditional lawyer and you're interested in understanding financial institutions and technology and how it meets the law, then you definitely have to make the effort while you're in law school to take those classes, the electives that are going to get you that experience. So narrowing in terms of practice, yes, it's very litigation heavy and focused, but broadening in terms of, you know, for law school, be adaptable, survive. You don't need to be perfect at anything, but whatever is presented your way, you need to quickly adapt to it and respond to it in a competent manner. So that, I hope that answers the question properly for whomever asked.
Thank you. I received another question that I'm going to actually direct to Jamie as our most recent bar taker. The question is, how has law school prepared you for the bar, and were there any surprises along the way? And anyone else is free to add on to that.
Sure. So well, full disclosure, I didn't pass the bar the first time, so I had to take it 2 times, and I'm waiting to hear back about the second time I took it. Obviously hoping it went well, but if it doesn't, honestly, I'm in a position where I guess, I'll just retake it. I saw somebody post about taking it like 7 or 9 times. I mean, hopefully it won't get to that level, but I guess like obviously not passing was a surprise. But honestly, at the very beginning of law school, I was so not enjoying it that I just thought I just have to get through law school and I won't even worry about the bar. I guess, what was the question? Sorry. Sorry, Abe. What was the question?
That's okay. The question was, how has law school prepared you to take the bar, or were there any surprises, things that they didn't teach you about the exam?
Okay, so basically you just have to know that you should take some bar heavy classes like evidence, corporations, you should probably take. But if you don't and you really just want your relaxed schedule, you're going to find yourself having a lot of studying to do at the end, before you take the bar. I kind of wished I had, really taken that to heart, that at the end of the 3 years of this, I have this big test. And so if you really go into law school as like a gunner, it's actually, it will very much help you out in the end when you actually have to take the bar. So I guess just the studying, as much as it sucks, is super useful towards when you have to take the bar.
Great, thank you, Jamie. So I see that we are at about 10 minutes left, so we can leave time for questions. I'm going to turn to our last question of the panel, and this is open to anyone. And that is, what would you say is the biggest misconception of working in the actual practice of law?
I don't know if this is a big misconception, but I think one thing that surprised me about practice is how much negotiating goes on, and how sometimes, in civil procedure, for example, you learn about all of these rules, you learn about the federal rules, and you think, okay, these rules are hard and fast, and these are the only rules I need to follow. And then, you learn all of these deadlines for the bar, and then you go into practice and you realize that a lot of discovery, for example, is negotiation, or a lot of deadlines are not the ones that you have to calculate, through looking through a lot of rules. It's the ones that the judge gives you. I mean, obviously you need to look at the rules and know the rules by heart for any case that you're on. But what surprised me was how how flexible things can be sometimes, and how much of practice is talking to the other side, talking to your colleagues, negotiating search terms for discovery, negotiating when we're going to respond, talking, rather than this really adversarial, like, I'm on one side, you're on the other side, even in litigation process. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to kind of also add that I think, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I knew going into law school, coming out of law school, that the whole thing is that as a lawyer, you're always learning, you're always improving, you're always, et cetera. And that's why we have CLE credits, continuing legal education. And now that I'm at a law firm, I'm continuing to see how that's the case, because like the reasons why you end up working on, I guess this applies mostly to litigation, but it can go on both sides. The reason why you end up working on a thing is because there isn't an easy answer to it yet. If there was an easy answer, it would have been done by a robot, or it would have been already figured out by case law. And when you're in law school, you know, fortunately the professor has the answer, right? And then you become a lawyer, and it's like, well, the answer is, you know, what you like, the best you can argue it, the best you can explain it to your partner, to your associates, you know, the best. You kind of realize that really law is continuing to learn things. And that's why I think, you know, as Judge Rice had said, you know, law school really does teach you how to think like a lawyer, not necessarily how to be a lawyer. And I definitely have always found that to be true. But that's, you know, as frustrating as it is that it really only teaches you how to think like a lawyer, and why I think it's good to take those experiential classes. I think the reason why it does it is because it's putting you out there with the core competencies to then be able to graduate from the law school with the ability to do whatever kind of law you want, because it's all learnable. You know, you can, like, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. Like if you want to, you know, get those experiences that Sabienne has, you can, you know, work your butt off and you can learn those things. And if you want to, you know, start your own law clinic and do NFTs like Jamie does, if you want to go to a big firm like Anastasiya and me, like if you want to be a judge, you're going to come out of law school, regardless of whether you did transactional or litigation, knowing how to learn those things. And so when you become a lawyer, you know, don't be surprised when it is truly, you know, another lawyer at your law firm, in your clinic, whether in, you know, the public defender's office, when it is going to be someone who's even senior to you saying, you know, what do you think the answer is? And you're going to figure it out, and it's going to happen, and you can do it.
All right, so with that, in the last couple minutes that we have, we can turn things over. If anyone has any questions, either raise hand or send them in the chat.
If you don't have any question, I just want to leave with some words of encouragement for anyone thinking of law school or who is in law school. First and foremost, as you saw, there's a wide range of experiences here. You are running your race at your own pace. And I know the legal field is super competitive, and there's this culture of, you know, you're looking at what someone else is doing to try to do better than them or whatever. But at the end of the day, it is your path. You run your race at your own pace. There are people who are top of their class, and, you know, they're graduating fine, but then they don't pass the bar. It's at the end of the world, right? If you want to be a lawyer, you're gonna be a great lawyer. And whatever path you choose, whether you're at a firm, you start there, or you finish there, you become partner, or you are, I don't know, chief counsel at some startup company, because that's the wave now, or you're doing what Jamie's doing. I would encourage everyone to check out her website. It's pretty cool. And Jamie BT Dubs, I don't know what the NFT regulations is going to be, so you have to watch out for that in a few. And run your race at your own pace. That is my first advice. What is my second advice to you? Finally, I would just say, being a lawyer is not a personality, and many people don't understand that. It is not a personality. Let me repeat that. Being a lawyer, being a law student is not a personality. You were someone before law school, and you will be someone after law school. And you were complex beings. So why is it that this one thing that you did that most of the population finds hard becomes who you are? And this is why we get such a bad rep in the field, because, you know, they say lawyers are arrogant, and you're like, yeah, I'm an attorney. Okay, what else? Do you run? What do you do for fun? Can you bake? Do you enjoy wine? So please find a hobby before going to law school that you're going to stick with while you're in law school. It is very hard, obviously. So you can't enjoy everything that you used to do. But for me, I was just like, whatever happens in law school, I will not stop working out. So I was weightlifting while I was in law school, but that's the only thing I could do besides all of my interests. So yes, being a lawyer is not a personality, and run your race at your own pace. Thank you.
I like that.
Great. Well, on that outstanding point, I will very briefly wrap up and just say thank you to all our panelists. We really appreciated your time and hearing all your advice and information for us. Especially for the law students who joined us tonight. I would like to remind you of the HERD Tufts mentoring service. And also, if you have any further questions or be interested in continuing to receive emails about our law student group, please feel free to email me. Amy McDonald had put that in the chat earlier on. And otherwise, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you very much.